Hi everyone, welcome to our Claris FileMaker training course on how to build a custom CRM in 30 days. This training is designed primarily for beginners or those of you who need kind of a refresher with the Claris FileMaker platform. Over the course of 30 days, we're going to spend about an hour each day covering topics from the very basics of the Claris FileMaker platform in terms of the tools, the products, deployment, security, all those things you need to know about as you build a custom application. So keep in mind that towards the beginning of the training, the topics are more basic in nature. And as we get towards the end of the training, they're somewhat more advanced. I would say probably intermediate level topics. Now keep in mind this special part of this training is that while we're not only talking about the FileMaker platform, we're talking how you can rapidly customize an existing free CRM that you can download today. It's unlocked. So taking that CRM and customizing it to your organization's particular needs. Now, a couple important links to keep in mind. One is that if you need a copy of FM Starting Point, the free Unlock CRM, visit fmstartingpoint.com and press the button. And then our system will shoot you an email with the current links to that CRM. If you're looking for additional FileMaker training, visit fmtraining.tv and press the bundles button, and that will allow you to get more of this highly animated and somewhat energetic training material to help you through the learning process with the Claris FileMaker platform. Lastly, if you have questions about the FileMaker platform or you're looking for some additional help, maybe some one-on-one coaching help, feel free to email us at support@rcconsulting.com. Today's conversation is about, and I'm going to tee this up a little bit. Michael, get ready to go. So today's conversation is about a deep dive on and I'm going to narrow myself down a little bit less, Richard. Right, here we go. A deep dive on the inspector. Now, let's talk about what the inspector is and why we haven't done it thus far. If I go to layout mode, Command or Control L on the keyboard, or you could say edit layout up here if you can see the button, or you could say view layout mode. So that is the same as that right there, same as pressing Command or Control L, layout mode. It's kind of like design mode. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of Richard here. When we pop this up, so if I go to browse mode, if I'm here, I go to browse mode and layout mode. It actually is browse mode, layout mode. What happens is, I just duplicated that. What happens is that these panes pop out left and right. So let me make it like this. Let me try it again. Layout mode, and then I'm going to have it show the panes on both sides. So browse mode. Yeah, it's a little bit, if you have a big enough window, the way it works is that basically these are like, if you ever had a kid trying to teach them how to swim, they put these little inflatable things on their arms called water wings. And that way your kid's flailing around in the pool and they kind of keeps them upright and from drowning as a general rule. And so what it does, these are like inflatable water wings on layout. So we're in browse mode, you don't see them. You go to layout mode, you kind of hear them, inflate, right? So they're inflated. And so the idea is that this center section right here doesn't move, it stays there. If I go back to browse mode, they go down. And so they inflate left and right. So you have a pane right, a pane left. So left pane, right pane, see hide and show the panes. On the right side, these four panes together are collectively known together, or these four panels, which are in the right pane, are collectively known together as the inspector. If I say view and I say inspectors and I say new inspector right here, right now it's showing the inspector. All this means if I turn this off, it's going to hide the right pane. So that button right there is this, like if I hide it and I show it, it kind of keeps inflating and de-inflating. If I say view over here, I say shut off the inspector, it does the same thing. So once again, Claris kind of calling different things, I guess. I could show it again, but if I wanted to say, show a new one, so that is what they consider the inspector. The inspector used to be this floaty window thing. It's still available as a floaty window thing. And what you can actually do, which is if you're doing some really hairy layout work, I'm going to hide the left side. And what you could do is have the inspector right here, say maybe this one's on the data panel and this one's on maybe the appearance panel. And you could actually have all four of them, two more windows and show each of these, right? And so as you click on something, it's going to bring up the relevant data on these. It's kind of cool, right? if I go back to browse mode, it deflates. If I go back to layout mode, it inflates the left or right pane if they're visible and inflates the matching inspector at the same time. Kind of cool. So what we're going to do today is a deep dive of these four panels that are in the right pane. The rub is that why haven't we done this before? Well, the reason is that largely within the world of FileMaker, if you learn mostly about the data, the top elements, the top half of the data item, and then you learn about maybe the random bits and pieces of the appearance pane, then you have enough to be dangerous and to build a FileMaker solution. When I bring a field on screen, what I tend to do is I drag it over, I stick it somewhere, right? And then what I do is and you're going to see this different than what Michael does. I grab it, I move it pretty close, and then what I might do is use the cursor keys to do precise alignment. And then eventually it gets this little, see the little line kind of lock on, like missile lock. It tells you that it's aligned along that line. I do stuff like that. I don't come over here and dive super deep into this. We're going to dive super deep today because there's good skills, it's good things to know about, right? But the idea is that you can be successful in FileMaker without mastering all the little bells and whistles and the button pushing, right? So, all right, so walk us through today what we're doing, and and feel free to editorialize like what you think is important and what you think is not important, which might be different than me. That's totally fine, right?
Okay,
but,
absolutely.
Yeah, cool. All right, off you go.
All right, off I go. So, like Mr. Carlton said, we're going to be going and doing a deep dive into the inspector on the right-hand side. So, just to reiterate, we've got these tabs up here at the top. We've got the position, the styles, the appearance, and the data. And so what I'm going to do, just so that you guys can see this, is I just made a little cheat sheet for you up there. And I'm just going to put it right there. So when I'm going around on these, you can see which tab I'm in, because in order to see what tab you're in, you have to hover over it. And that can be a little bit problematic and hard to understand when you're first getting started with these tabs. So we're going to start over on the right tab, the data tab. And we're just going to go top to bottom. And I'm just going to give you a little summary on what all these things do. And so if you click on a field, this top part right here shows you what field you're looking at, and it tells you what you're actually viewing. So right here, we're on this text field. If I wanted to change that, I could click on this and I could change the field that I'm in. It's the same as if I were to just double click on that field. So it's similar to how we were looking at the inspector earlier, where you can kind of access the same stuff in different ways. So I'm just going to cancel that. And the next piece down is this placeholder text, and that's what's going to show on the field when the field is empty. So right now I have it so it says choose. So if I go into browse mode, I'm going to just delete this for a sec, and you see it says choose. And so that's what the placeholder text does. And so you can put whatever you want in there. You can do cool things like specify calculation. So if I wanted to put something like I don't know, just for an example, I could say and account name or something like that. We'll just do account here, and you probably wouldn't want to put that in there, but just so you can see you can do things like calculations. So it's pretty powerful, pretty cool stuff there. I'm gonna just go ahead and delete that out of there because we don't need it. And the next piece down is the control style. And here's where you control what that field type is. And so if I hit this drop-down menu, you can see there's a lot of different options. Edit box, drop-down list, pop-up menu, checkbox set, a lot of different options there. So the default is going to be an edit box. So if I were to just pull something onto the screen, it's going to be a edit box, as you can see right there. So I'm gonna just get that off the screen, try to keep things clean. Hey boss, do you want me to go into what each of these items do, or how deep do you want me to get into all of these?
We've kind of talked about these already. What I would simply say on this real quick is that the control styles are an artificial overlay. Everything over here, for the most part, is an artificial overlay of the field. It doesn't affect the data that's saved down in the database. Remember, the table, under the hood, the database is basically, if you want to visualize what the database is, it's a big spreadsheet, is a visualization. It's just columns of data is all it is. This is like that old saying, lipstick on a pig, right? So the field is 500. Maybe the data is 500 in the value of a number field, but you can apply lipstick to the top of the pig. Under the hood, it's still a pig, but you can make it look more beautiful or make it more applicable or put a dollar sign or make it currency or whatever you want to do, change the coloring, styling of it. You're only affecting it on this layout right here for the most part. We'll cover if you get into styles and things like that, we can cover how it might affect it elsewhere. But it's not affecting the data underneath the hood that's saved in the database. It's only affecting the presentation of it on this specific layout, is what I would say. And that's the same for most of all the items over here on the right. And the control style is the same way. It's just another way of kind of throwing it up on screen and trying to give your users some guidelines, some interface, improvements, right? Like a radio button allows you to select one item. If you have checkboxes, you can select more than one item. It's a way of guiding the user maybe through some data entry a little bit, right? But yeah, I mean, you don't have to go too deep beyond what I've said because we've covered control styles elsewhere because Margaret is notating that in the database, I'm sure. Right, Margaret?
Wonderful. I like that.
Yeah. So the lipstick here and the sweater on the pig doesn't change the pig underneath, right? So just understand what you're doing, right? So yeah. All right, cool.
I like that a lot. All right, moving along. This checkbox will just show you a vertical scroll bar for an edit box. See, as you can see, that's there now. You can have it show it so it always shows or only when scrolling. Pretty neat there. Autocomplete using existing values. So if you have this selected and your control style is either a drop-down list or a pop-up menu, or actually drop-down list, when you start typing into the list, it will automatically populate what you're trying to type in there. So let's look at this field here, this note type. See, we've got that selected on the drop-down list. So if I go into browse mode here and I delete that and I say email, you see it automatically populated with the rest of what was in that list because we had it right there in this list. Okay, so we're gonna go back into layout mode and we're gonna keep on going down. Show repetitions. This is an interesting one. If you have a repeating field, which this field is not, we don't typically use a lot of repeating fields.
I don't think we've discussed them at all, actually. I don't recall repeating fields. So you can maybe give a really quick definition.
I'll give you a very quick one. So we're going to look at the website here. I'm going to double click on this and I'm going to go into my definitions here. And we're looking for website. And I'm going to turn this into a repeating field in the options menu here. That would be in storage. We have maximum number of repetitions. I'm just going to put 5 in case we wanted to, for some reason, have 5 different websites. And I say, okay. This now, you see this is no longer gray. It has options here. And so I can show however many repetitions I want. So if I want to say all 5 of them, click out of there. There we go. And now you can see I've got 5 repetitions.
Okay, so let me help out here a little bit. Yeah, so you can go down there. So let me cover this real quick on this part of it. So for those of you who are engineers or have a mathematical or some sort of science degree, this repetition is a one-dimensional array. So it's we get into things called matrices. There are 2-dimensional arrays. It's at an X and Y kind of coordinate. This is a one-dimensional array. And it used to be a really big thing in FileMaker 2. It was basically, in terms of criticality or urgency or greatness, was basically, we didn't have portals and things like that, so we used repeating fields to pretend they were line items. That went away with FileMaker 3. It's really, really old, but some of you are really, really old, right? So like me. And that's when I first learned. We did repeating fields because there were no portals and line items. So these days, its applicable use is really limited. You have to probably be familiar with what a one-dimensional array is and why you might use it. And of course, developers are always trying to come up with new and unique ways of doing it. Nick might say he has the most amazing way of using something in there. There's nothing in there that is critically essential. I don't, because it's got some drawbacks, etc. It just is it's basically a way of having a field auto extend itself, right? A little bit reminds me of a value list, except that these are actually separate, like little cells that are in there. If you click on those individually, Michael, they're literally separate cells, even though they kind of reminds you it's really a lot like a value list, right? A little bit, right? So I think modern days people would use a value list. But you can target specific spots in the array, right? You can go for spot 2 or spot 3, or show me spots 5 through 10 if you wanted to, right? All sorts of stuff. So once again, if you're for basic business, for beginners, if you're a beginning FileMaker person, just dump everything we just discussed. Don't worry about it. It's not important. So
yes, not important. But that's the functionality there. So I'll move along from that. As you saw, I just changed it to show only 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Change it back from 1 to 5.
As opposed to hide objects when, which is not a trivial, not important thing. This is one of the more important tools, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is one of the more important tools. We're constantly hiding stuff. And a good example of that is right here. I've got a lot of hide conditions going on for the status here, because in find mode or in browse mode, we've got these nice buttons here that look very nice and they change the status. But then when you go into find mode, you've got a nice little drop down here, so you don't have to click the buttons and you can actually choose what you're looking for. And so that's what we're doing in the hide objects when. So if I go over here, you can see I've got this get window mode equals 1. So you can enter in a calculation for when you want something to hide. For instance, if you want to hide a field, hide a field if something else is empty, you can do things like that. Very powerful. This is something that beginner developers should practice a lot and get very, very accustomed to using, because it's very important.
Yeah. Margaret, we did a live stream on this, right? We did on the hidden objects. We spent time on the hide objects. So yeah.
It was Monday actually, but yes.
Yes.
So this was a recent discussion.
Wonderful. So that's fresh in the memory for a lot of these people. Okay, so if we keep going down, or before I move away, you can default, it does not apply this in find mode. You have to choose this little button in order to apply the hide objects in find mode. So something to be aware of. Moving down to the field entry, this is basically just controlling what happens when you try to click into a field. Can you click into a field? So right now I've got a field entry selected on in both browse mode and find mode. So if I go into browse mode here, I can click into the field, click out of the field, no problem. But if I were to turn it off, click in here, wait a sec, why did that not work? I didn't turn it off, there we go. And I'm clicking right now, and it's not going in. So that's something that sometimes a field will get, I've seen a lot of people accidentally set this to their default style, and they try to click into the new field and it doesn't work. So you have to make sure you come in here and turn it on. So if you're ever at a moment where you're trying to click into your field and you just can't click into it, got to check that little checkbox there. Some of you got to select entire field entry contents on entry. That will just select all of the text that's inside of your field when you click on it. This next piece controls what happens when you hit the tab, the enter, or the return keys. If you have these selected, it will go to the next object. So if I say select those and I click here, click into that and I hit return, instead of going down, it goes to the next object, as you can see.
Oh. So that's where you fix that. I've run into that before. I'm like, why is my return not exiting the field?
Yes, that's the spot right there. So we like to keep those off by default, because typically when you're typing in a field and hit enter, you want a carriage return. You don't want to go to the next field. Maybe
normally by default, tab is the normal one that would be on by the FileMaker platform. Tab is the normal way for that. But once again, you can customize it.
Exactly. So enable field for quick find and do not apply visual spell check. Those are pretty self-explanatory. This just enables the field for a quick find, and it doesn't apply visual spell check if you have that selected on. The input method is pretty interesting. You probably aren't going to be changing this one too much. There's just a lot of strange settings. I don't ever change those. I've never done that. I have, however, changed the touch keyboard type. So if you're on FileMaker Go and you click into a field, you're going to get a keyboard that pops up. And this dropdown tells you which keyboard you're going to see, whether it's going to be the default for whatever type of device you're using, or maybe it's going to be a phone pad where it just has the numbers 1 through 0, maybe enter, numeric 10 key. It's all different. So definitely play around with these and check these out if you're using FileMaker Go for your solution, because it's helpful when let's say you're typing in a phone number. You don't want the entire alphabet, you just want the numbers. So pretty cool stuff there. We've got some. Sorry, Margaret?
I just said that was rather nifty. And a real quick reminder, people, if you have questions, toss them out. I'm watching. So
yes, please ask questions. I'm more than happy to answer and clear things up for you all. Okay, so data formatting. So if you have a certain type of field, it doesn't typically, this does not work for text. I'm sorry, for edit box fields. But if you had something like a date, for instance, you can change the way that your data is formatted. For instance, you can see this date. I'm sorry, I'll go to this one. This is a better one. So this format, scroll down a little bit for you all. This format is in the American Standard of December 25th, 2014. But if you want to change that, you could pull this down and say, let's add the day. And so actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to View, Show, and I'm going to show some sample data so you can kind of see this in real time. I'm just going to move this up here so you can see that. So if I change this to a different one, you can do just the numbers. Oh, that's the wrong one. There we go. Really good stuff. So you can format this to be whatever you want. Like if you always want to see, the day of the week, you can change that right here. And there are a couple different options for that. You've got date format. You've got number format. Is this a number field? Let's see. Let's get a number field on the screen. I'm just gonna throw this one on. Delete that. So you can have different formatting for numbers as they're entered. You can have it as entered. You can have it as a Boolean, which would just give you a yes or a no value, depending on if the value for that field was 0 or anything that's greater than 1 or greater than 0, excuse me. A decimal, you can format your decimals so that if you want only a certain amount of decimal points, let's say you have a really large number, but you only want to see 2 numbers, you can click that on and it will only show you the 2. For instance, this one, if I say 1 point, a bunch of numbers, and then I click out of the field to commit, you only see 23. When I click back in, the values are still there, but you're just viewing it as.
Let me interrupt real quick. So this is go back to layout mode. So what did we say about these over here on the right? These what are these? This is the stuff on the right in this inspector is essentially what? Lipstick on a pig. Okay. So if he does this truncating or rounding or whatever he's doing over here, how does that change the underlying pig? Doesn't change the pig at all, right?
Just a pig.
Now, if you had a calculation where you applied a truncate or a rounding or something like that, then you would be altering the pig, okay? But this is just, once again, the lipstick level of the operation, right? Yes? So, once again, you'd have to decide if you want to round the data on screen or truncate it. In this case, it's just a truncate, right? It's truncating, it's not rounding it. Is that important that it's just visually like that? And that you don't change the core data, or does the core data need to be changed? If you need to change the core data, you need to change the pig. You got to go into field definitions and figure out how you want to do that, right? So
right.
Very
so
important.
We had a good question by FM Bob in Discord, the difference between or what is truncating versus rounding, and the answer to that is truncating will actually remove the decimals. So if you have 1.23759, whatever they are, and you want to truncate everything except for 2 digits, you would get 1.23. If you round, it's going to maybe go to 1.24 or 1.22, depending on the value of the decimal.
Yeah, I would say the truncate is just chopping it off in like in my not very smart way of talking. It's just like, hey, just chop it off, right? Just chop it off, right?
Right.
Chop it.
So I'll just briefly kind of go over these last couple features here, or options. You've got the negative. If you want your negative number to be red or blue or whatever, you can do that. Separators for a number that has either a decimal or something that's greater than 999. Once you get to 1000s, you can have a comma or a period depending on the country that you're in and what you're looking for there. Numeral types and these Japanese characters, I don't ever touch those, so I'm not going to get into those. I don't want to speak incorrectly. Boss, do you have anything to add on anything in the data tab?
Yeah, I don't do Japanese either. So, and Japanese are a huge chunk of 1/3 of all FileMaker users are Japanese. So they, yeah, so the tail is wagging the dog on that a little bit. Yeah, it's for them. All right, so yeah, go ahead, keep going.
All right, moving right along. So we're going to move into the appearance tab now. The appearance tab is what's going to control your fonts, your colors, your shadowing, your borders, your alignment, things like that. A lot of powerful stuff in here. So up here is a small little area for styling. I'm going to get into that when we get to the style tab. But if you want to control styling from the appearance tab, you can do that right here via these drop downs here.
Well,
these drop downs.
It's the first one is the styling, but the second one is the state, right? Isn't that the state? The second one, the normal there, I think that's the state, right?
Yes. Yes. So these ones are drop downs that control the theme and styling.
Oh, that.
And then this is the state here.
Yeah. You're going to cover the state right now because the state's kind of important. Okay, good, cool.
Exactly. So the state of a field is what kind of the context of what's happening to the field. When you have a field, its state is normal. If you click, you can hover over a field, and that's a hover state. You can press into the field, and that's the state of actually being pressed. So the action of pressing puts it into the pressed state, and then you can have the in focus state once you have clicked in. So if I were to go over here, go back into browse mode. Right now, we're looking at this note field here. Right now, it's just in its normal state. If I were to put my mouse over it, it's hovered. I'm pressing my keyboard, I'm pressing my mouse down, so it's in pressed state now. And as soon as I let go, it is now in focus. So those are the 4 states that we're dealing with. So go back over here, and you can choose how you're going to format these based on the state. So let's just make a button here. We'll just put it right up here. And I'll just put a little guy in there just so we can see what's going on. So that's the normal state. If I were to, click on the button and go into hover, I want the icon to be orange, nice, ugly orange. Actually, I like the color orange, but the orange, sorry, no, I do love the color orange, but in this particular instance, not very pretty. And then we're gonna change the pressed state so that we'll make it purple with a border of green, and turn that border on, make it a little bit thicker so you can see it. And they're in focused. We can see if we can get some in focus as well. We'll do an outer shadow here. Make it nice and thick. Okay, so if I go back into browse mode, it's in its normal state. What happened?
Didn't change. Yeah, it
didn't change. What happened there?
I don't know if it's because you're in top nav. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not. Move it down the body just for fun. Yeah. Nope, it's having its moment.
It is having its moment. What's going on here? Normal, hover, pressed.
Does the button need to do something in order for it to acknowledge?
Oh, I think you might be right. Actually, Margaret, I think you might be right. So we're going to just say button action, single step, and we're going to just say set variable to nothing.
Okay.
There we go. Good one, Margaret. Awesome. You should be coaching us. All
no,
right.
That would be
so
terrible.
Here's the hover state. Here's the pressed state. And if we want to get in focus, we'd have to tab to it, which I don't even think it's in the tab order right now. So we're going to skip over that. but we understand kind of the idea of the different states and what you can do there with.
Just keep in mind that different objects have different available states, right? So the fact that we have these right here is one thing. Not every object has every state, and not every object has every state on every platform. So if you're in FileMaker Go, for example, there's no hover, right? Because it can't tell that your finger is over it, but not really over it, right? There's no like, that kind of level of technology, right? So there's no hovering over. It's pressed or it's either normal or pressed or released or active, right? So just keep that in mind. And in terms of WebDirect, you're probably going to have its own little sets of limitations, whatever those are. I'm not the biggest fan of WebDirect, mostly because I don't like to apologize to customers. That being said, you can build a good solution with WebDirect if you have enough time and money and effort. Just keep in mind, once again, these are somewhat variable. There's basically all the states are supported if it makes sense, and B, if Claris could do it without causing too big of a performance penalty, right? So just keep that in mind. So cool.
Great. Yeah, great point. Thank you for clarifying on that. So let's move down a little bit. We're going to look at the graphic here. For the rest of this, I'm just going to have everything in the active state just for ease of this demonstration. So if I click on this button, we're in the graphic setting, you have in the graphic area, you've got this fill, and you can change this to be a solid color, a color gradient, or an image. Color gradient's kind of neat. You can move things around, change the color. Once you get in there, you can change the angle of the gradient, the type of gradient, stuff like that. Pretty neat stuff. So I'm gonna just put it back to none for now, and move on to this next part, which is the line. This is the border on the outside of the object. So if I say solid, you can change the width of that line to whatever it is that you want it to be. You can change the corner radius, so you can round objects. So you can make a circle right there with this feature right here. So moving down into the advanced graphic. This is something that I'm using this all the time. Both of these areas I use all the time when I'm developing. If I wanted to add something like an outer shadow, for instance, you might have seen some outer shadow in Nick's neomorphism. You can look at Nick's object. This object right here has a gray shadow on it with the opacity of 12, horizontal and vertical offsets of 1, and some blur and spread going on there. So that's what the shadow does. You've got an inner shadow as well, which does the same thing. The outer just does shadow on the outside. The inner does kind of like a shadow on the inside. As you can see, when I clicked on it, this black line kind of started popping up, and you can, make that thicker as you need to, if you need to. So cool stuff there. The padding. This is really interesting and very important. The padding controls the width of your visibility, or the width of the area that is not visible on a field or an object. And so to demonstrate that, I'm going to just take a little bit of text here. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste this text in here, and we're going to go back into browse mode, or into layout mode, and I'm going to change some of this padding here so you can see what I'm talking about. And so it controls what's on the inside of a object or field. You can see these lines getting away from us. So if I took this all the way up, made this 500, it just looks, it's all padding, so you can't see anything that's there. Obviously, you would never do that, but for demonstration, that's kind of what the padding does and what it controls. The text is very self-explanatory. If you've ever used something like Word, which most of us have, you can change the text font, the style, color, size, everything, all this stuff. The one thing that I would like to show you is this styles thing. This is really, really cool, and something that I use fairly often. A lot of times I get a client that says, I want something uppercase, and you can just make it uppercase right there, just like that. So definitely spend some time looking at what all these do. They're pretty self-explanatory, but this is my favorite one. I always use that uppercase one. So if you're ever looking to make something uppercase, that's where it is. Let's see, moving along, we've got the alignment down here. Same thing, it just kind of aligns your text on the left or right centered. in the middle of your field. If you want the text to be aligned to the bottom of your field, that can all be controlled right here. So you can also control line spacing, and the spacing can be in points, inches, or centimeters. Like if I wanted to make this, for instance, 0.5, I could make 0.5. It doesn't look good, but I could do it. Or I can make it 1, go back to normal. I can make it 2, and you can give yourself a little bit more space in between the lines. So the paragraph, all good stuff, all important stuff. So let's move along to the styles tab here. Styles are fun, but I just want to warn you that they can be very dangerous. There's two things that we're working with here. We're working with a theme, and we're working with a style within the theme. So right now, we're on the RCC minimalist mouse theme. So if I click on that, it gives you options if you need to save or rename. But before we go that, you can change your theme up here in this little icon up here. And so it's really dangerous to change themes. So I recommend being very, very careful before you do any of this stuff, because it can be very destructive. Make sure to make a backup of your file before you start changing your themes. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients go in and they start messing with this stuff and they're not paying attention. They save over their old theme, and it's just bad. It's bad news. So just be very, very careful as you go through that. So a style is a style for a specific object within a theme. So if I were to click, you can see these are all my themes here. If I were to click on a button, you can see all those themes change, and you can tell what type of style you're looking at, or what type of object you're looking at right here. This is a button. This is an edit box. And what I can do is, if I want to, I can change what my edit boxes look like. And so if you make a theme that you really, really like, you come over here, you change some stuff around, you give it that really awesome, beautiful orange background, and you give it a nice border, green, say none. You give it some padding you really like. And once you get it set so that it looks really good, you're like, oh, I love this. This is the best looking edit box I can ever think of. You go into your themes, and this is my current theme that I'm currently selected. I'm on the account field master detail theme. If I save over that, anything else that is in this layout with that theme is going to change. And that's why it's dangerous, because if you only want this one to be orange, but all of these other fields are this style, you're going to be in big trouble. Or if you save over the default style and all of these are default, you're going to be in big trouble. So when you save, always make sure if you're going to save something, save it as a new style, unless you are 1000% sure that you want to save it to that current style. So I'm just going to try saving it to the current style, see what happens. All right, we were safe there. It didn't do anything bad. However, if I went to this is the original one, I believe. If I change this style, I'm going to change it to orange and go back to my theme, and I change this. I'm going to say save to current style. Look at that. Oh. It changed everything. And so this is why you got to be careful when you're changing your styles and your themes. So something to note is that this particular style is only for this layout. If I wanted to change it across the entire application, then I would come up here to the theme and I would save changes to theme. So if I click this right now, every field in my file, which is a lot of them, that have the edit box black left 13 theme style, they're all going to change. So I'm going to do it just to show you how dangerous it is. You would get this little dialog box says, are you sure you want to do this? I'm going to say yes. And if I go here, oh, ugly, ugly, ugly. So please be extremely careful when you're saving themes and styles. You don't want to save over the theme. I've done it before, and it is a nightmare trying to get it back to the way that it was before. So just be very, very careful. As powerful as it is dangerous as well. So we're going to move. Do we have any questions so far?
We kind of have more of like a general question, like observation from Keith. FM design observation. FM design needs two elements that appear: structure, function, the design. True or false?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
FM design requires two elements: structure and function, and like the UI. So you're basically talking about, Keith, UX and UI, which is user. Actually, no, you're not. User experience is something totally different. But basically, is asking if FM design is made of like two elements, which is like the actual function of the database, and then the lipstick on a pig, as Richard was discussing it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great observation. It's both. It's not one or the other. It's both. You want to make sure that your databases and your solutions look beautiful, but you also want to make sure that they function correctly and function well. So yes, that is a great observation. It's both structure and function. It's kind of like yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good observation. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the position tab. We are running out of time, so I'm going to try to breeze through this one.
It isn't too complicated, if I recall correctly.
No, this stuff's all very, very easy, and it won't take long to go over this one. So Mr. Carlton today said that he clicks on a field and he moves it with the keyboard. So that's one way to do things. But you can also clicked on. I got a little chunky fingers, but you can also change things up here with the by just manually inputting data. The first thing I'd say here is this is the name of the field. So if I wanted to name an object, I could. So like if you had like a go-to object, this is where I would name the object. So this would be fax. So that's the name of the object. Here you can have a tooltip so that if you hover over the object with your mouse, it will show you something. This right here says if this flag in preferences is set to yes, the tooltip will read enter fax. If this flag is not set to yes, it's just going to be blank. Okay, so in the preferences, there is a checkbox where you can say if you want tooltips or not. So that's what this if statement says. A little complicated to just say, you can just say like enter fax. And so now, let's get that in parentheses. And so now, when I hover over this in browse mode, it will just say enter fax. Okay, so that's what the tooltip is. All right, so moving along, you can change your position by inputting data. So if I said 400, 500, you can move things around manually. I'm going to go back to where it was. Something to be aware of here is that it's for my application here, it's set as to be in points, but you can click on this here and you can set it to inches. You can click on it again and set it to centimeters. So if you prefer to develop in inches or centimeters, you can. I would just recommend staying with points, but just so you're aware that it is there. And sometimes people will click on this and they'll be like, I have no idea why I'm in inches. I don't want to be in inches. I don't like being in inches. And so that's why I bring this up, is that if you want to go back to points, you just click on the any of these here. Okay. So important stuff. I use that a lot when I'm comparing fields. This field, I'm like, oh, I really like the height of this one, but this one's too high. So I go, okay, this one is 25 high. Okay, so I come here, oh, this one's 35. I'll just select that and I'll make it 25 and press enter, and it changes it to 25. So that's a way to manually shape the sizes of your fields and objects.
Instead of trying to eyeball it. Pretty
exactly. Exactly. So the auto sizing and locking here, really, really important stuff to get this down. If you want to make your database dynamic, so when you stretch out the window and it doesn't start to look funky, this is what you want to be looking at here. So this will just lock part of the field to either the top, left, bottom, or right. If you have, let's just look at this one here. We're looking at the account name. So this is just locked to the left-hand side and the top. If I say go back to browse mode, you can see it just looks normal. Come back here, click on it again, and now I'm going to lock it to both the right and the left. And what's going to happen when I go back in browse mode is it's going to stretch. Let me see. Let me put a little thing around it so that we can be sure we're seeing things correctly. I'm just adding a little border around it. And now you see when I resize the window, it stretches because it's locked to the left-hand side and the right-hand side. If I turn off this left-hand side here, go back into my position tab. If I turn off this left side here, it's just going to move to the right because it's locked to the top and the right. It no longer locks to the left-hand side. It no longer stretches. It just moves with the screen. If I were to lock it to the bottom instead of the top, it locks to the bottom. So as I move down, it goes up. When I resize the window down, it goes up. I'm sorry, when I resize the window to be larger, it goes down. That's a better way to say that. There we go.
You're good.
Thanks. Okay, so that's kind of the auto sizing and locking and anchoring, if you will, to different parts of the screen. Really, really powerful stuff. I highly recommend you practice this if you're unfamiliar with it. This spot right here, super important. I use this all the time, every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't fiddle around in here. And so what it is it's all positioning, alignment, and arranging. So what I can do is if I want to move a box so that it is in line with a second box, you saw the boss, using his keyboard, just going manual left. But what I do is I find where I want something to be. For instance, if I want the phone and the fax to be lined up, I will select both the phone and hold shift. Select phone, hold shift, and then select fax. And now there's a blue line around both of these because I'm selected both of them. If I move them, you can see they're both moving together. And so what I would do if I wanted the fax and the phone to be right next to each other, I would hit this align button. Boom. And now they're both lined up. And all of these do a different type of alignment or a type of spacing. So if I wanted to add a little more, let's say I want to add a little bit more space here. Let's say this one's misaligned. We'll go put that guy here and this guy here like that. And I want them all to be aligned up to the fax. And I want them a little bit spaced out, a little more space between them. I might move that up just a little bit. Okay. And I hold shift. I select fax. I select email. I'm going to align them both to whatever I want to align them for. Let's say I want to align them center. We'll do a different demo here. I want to align them centered to each other. Now you can see all of them are centered to each other. But I want to fix this gap. This gap is bigger than this gap. So I go to the spacing and I click this button. And you see that middle one moved up. Get this guy out of there. That middle one moved up. So now my spacing is the same between both of those. So the alignment and the spacing, very important and very good for putting things exactly where you want them to be if you don't want to use your mouse or your keyboard to drag and drop. So we'll move on to resizing. Let's say I want this phone, we'll kind of put him back here, go like that, align him. And let's say I want to resize this object, this phone number field, to be the same size as this fax field. I can go onto this resize and we've got resize to the smallest width, the largest width, the height, or both the width and the height. So I would just click this button here and I resize it to the same, to the other field. So you can do this with 10 objects if you want. If they're all together, select this one and resize it. And that one's resized as well. So very powerful stuff there. I highly recommend you getting acquainted with these. I like this one a lot. If I were to make this a little bit smaller, I like this one right here, which is the resize to smallest width and height. And it does both the height and the width at the same time. And then I would just space them out. And now we've got them all nice and lined up. So moving down, we have groups. If I wanted to put these all into a group, I can hit this group button. And now when I click on it, I can move all three of them all at the same time. If I want to if I want to actually edit a field inside of a group or an object inside of a group, I would just click a second time to get in. The group will have a dotted border around the outside, and my field will have a blue line around it. In fact, I'm going to go to the themes, and I'm on the edit box here, and I'm going to take that orange out because it's starting to
Great.
be annoying. So save changes to current style. I always ask myself twice, do I want to save to this current style? Yeah, I think I do. Okay. And now we're back to the way we were before. So I should have done that earlier. Sorry about that. Hopefully everyone's eyes aren't too blown out by all that beautiful orange. All right, so back to my position tab. So this is really interesting, this arrange tab. Once we get past the group, orange lipstick, exactly, Ruben. The arrange tab is really nice because if you've ever worked in something like Photoshop or something like that, you've got these objects on the screen that are all stacked on top of each other, and the ones that are visible are going to be the ones that you see on top. If you go over to my object tree over here, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Like this one, for instance, I want to move this guy over here to right there. Actually, that's a bad example because it's got, I'm going to make this solid white. There we go. That way you can't see through it. Come on. There we go. There we go. So now you can see this new button is on top of this button. If I wanted to bring the button from the back up to the front, I will go to my position tab and I will click this right. Well, there's two options here. I'll go into those before we do the demo. So you can bring to front, which will bring it all the way to the top, or you can just move it forward and it just brings it up one spot. So if we look over here, let's find where this object is. Okay, so there's that button and then there's this button. If I can either just drag these like this. So boop, now you can see that button's on top. Drag this one down. You can do that over here as well. So let's click on the one that's on top. If I want to move that one behind the object, I'd click this one here, send backwards, and you see it just moves it down once. We'll move it back to the front just so you can see that again. So now it's in the front, it just moved it up once. But if I click on one of these on the side, it's going to take it all the way to the top of the stack or all the way to the bottom of the stack. So I want to send it all the way to the bottom here. Go boop, and it sends it all the way to the bottom. And it stays inside of whatever object you're in. So I'm in a tab control here, so you can see that it just went to the bottom of that tab control. If I were to bring this out here, I'll just put it right there. It's not in. Oh, where'd it go? I think I just cut it. There we go. If I were to just bring this over here so that it's not in an object, see it's at the very top now. And if I go down, it sends it all the way to the very bottom. So if you're inside of something like a slide control or a tab or a popover object, it's going to just bring it to the bottom or top of that object, not the entire stack of objects on the entire layout. So moving along from there, we've got a lock. You can lock or unlock an object. If I lock an object, you can't do anything to it. If I try to move it, nothing happens. If I try to delete it, nothing happens. I can't do anything to it until I unlock it again, and then I can move it. So if you see those black lines, or those black X's, that will show you that that object is locked, and so you need to unlock it. All right.
Cool.
So go ahead, Margaret.
I was just saying, down to our last two tabs.
Down to our last two tabs. Before I get into the sliding and visibility, I'm going to get into just the show grid since we're already here. If I click show grid, it brings up these little grid lines here. If I want to snap an object to the grid, I can do that. I'm going to unlock this. And you can kind of see that it's snapping as I move. It's not a flow like now. It's kind of not, it's a little bit more fluid. It's not it's snapping to some things, but not the grid anymore. It's snapping to.
No, it's snapping to the other fields.
Exactly. So it's snapping to this object, but it's not snapping to the grid itself. So you can change the spacing on the grid by points, inches, or centimeters, same as before. If you click on those, you can change this number, I don't know, 100. I don't really change this number, but if you wanted to make these boxes bigger, you can. Less or more steps in the grid, you can say 4. So that's kind of how you would do those. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to go into is the sliding invisibility. And the sliding invisibility is really great for reporting. And so we're going to go into a, let's see, what layout do we want to do this in? Let's just go into the invoices. We're going to go into invoices, and I want this to be.
There's a list report at the bottom if you're looking for the report specific one.
I think this one will be fine because I don't want it to be a list view.
Oh yeah, understandable. Cool.
Okay, so let's see here. If I were to go into layout mode, oh, this is a portal. This is a good spot right here. We've got some messages here. So if I were to turn these on here, slide up based on all objects above, only objects directly above, also resize and closing part. So what this does is if the text is not filling up this edit box, then it's going to make the box, it can make the box smaller to kind of fit more stuff into your layout. And this only works in preview mode. It's not going to work on a regular layout. It will only work in preview mode. And this is great for reporting. So if I were to come in here and say like, hello world, and then I wanted to say here, say goodbye. Oh, that's probably not what I want to say. Test 2. Let's go like that. Click on this, and we've got sliding based on the objects above. If I go into preview mode, nothing happened. This one is always a little tricky. This is the one, slide up based on all objects above. So you want to click on the bottom one, the one that you want to slide up. And actually, I'm just going to.
Yeah, I never get this right the first time.
I was actually remembering the video where you showed this the first time that I saw it. You had a little trouble as well, so I don't feel too bad because it is a little tricky. Why is it not doing?
I'm not sure if it's all the objects is the objects on the side.
Oh yeah, it could be the objects on the side. I'm just going to clear that.
So it's one of these obscure. Okay.
There we go. See?
Yeah.
And so it resizes the object and moves it up on the layout. So if I go back into browse mode, that's what
the option was all directly above right here, right? Is that we're just about done there with that? But this is only functions during printing and preview, so it's kind of has limited utility unless you're getting funky with it. Also, for those of you wondering about variable with list views. So if you go to a list view real quick, this is also an interesting one. So go to back to like the contacts data or whatever or something. Okay, so if you go to layout mode and you make the body part taller, just grab the bottom and kind of drag it down, or however. Always doing that is such a pain in the ass, right? So make the height like, yeah, something, right? So then what you can do is you have a field that will fill up automatically, right? So the field was like this, and then if you fill it in, it's great. But then what happens is that if you tell it to slide up and then close see, now they're all uniformly this way, right? They're all uniformly, they look horrible, right? There you go. Okay, now go back to layout mode and let's set that. So you're going to say slide up, and then hit the enclosed that one there, and then go to browse mode initially, right? That's the problem. It still looks like, right? You go to preview mode, what do you get, right? Yeah. So the body parts now are variable height, right? So let me unwind all my edits here. We have variable width body parts. That's a cool one. That's a cool one. Only visible. I mean, it'd be great if it was in browse mode.
Yeah, that'd be real nice if they had something like that in browse mode as well. It's unfortunate.
So the part was contracted in size because it didn't have a reason to stay real wide. So.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the full rundown of the inspector here. If you have the one last thing I'll add is if you have a hard time remembering these tab names, I just remember it as PSAD, kind of like PSauce or Sassy. PSAD, position, styles, appearance, and data. So
okay, great. All right, any questions at this point? Right, it's a pretty good stuff, and even at the end, that variable body size is frankly pretty cool.
Is it possible to enlarge the inspector itself? I find it tough to read without readers.
Unfortunately, I don't think it is. I think it's, unless if you do it in a new window, can you resize it?
Generally, when you zoom in, yeah, no, that's a fixed size. You'd have to increase the overall resolution of your screen or decrease it's a whole display size, right? So yeah, it's a little small right now, especially with it's doing live compression of video. In an ideal world, yeah, you have to make sure that you can read it clearly. Sliding doesn't work if you have an object between that and what's not sliding. It might be a dot or something else because yeah. So it gets back to this issue of if you click on this over here, Michael, real quick for us. What you end up having is these two objects right here. So one is the object directly above, and all objects above, which could be objects over here too that would interfere with it, right? If you say only the object above, then it only is looking at the things that might run into directly, above and below, right? That makes sense. So it's one of those things. I don't know anyone, unless you practice it and you have a canned demo, you get it right the first time, just because we use it so rarely, and it does it, which is good enough, but you're never going to get it right the first time. It's just, of all things in your brain, you're going to commit the memory. You know that it's here. You know it'll adjust the body part in preview, but getting it right the first time, negative. Cool. All right. So Mikey says, good comment, nice, clear, and good coverage for beginners. Excellent. Cool. That's it for today, everyone. Catch you tomorrow. Thanks.